A taste of the song of the day. Hi guys, Miss B here. Today we're going to be talking about chapter 15 through 18. We're going to do 4 of them in this section so we can do 3 in the next and dive in a little bit deeper and not make these videos 20 minutes long. Fingers crossed. So today we're going to be talking about 15 through 17. In the last videos we kind of talked about how there's these major themes within these sections. So we talked about religion, we talked about judgment, we talked about social norms, and those all reign true in these chapters as well. But I want to assert that this one also shows a theme of how that judgment and that social norms of Maycomb affect children and the difference, the juxtaposition between adults and children. So in chapter 15, we see the kids being kids. We see the kids being brave. We see the kids being confused and they question things. And they get to see a new side of Atticus. So the Finch children, as well as Dill, see Atticus in a new way. So in this chapter, Atticus has to defend Tom Robinson. There's a mob of men who are trying to take him out of the town, out of the Maycomb jail, because they think that he's guilty, and Atticus believes that he is not, and so Atticus goes to protect him. This is the night before the court case begins, and so the men are very violent and scared of the outcome of the court case, and so they go to threaten Tom, and Atticus sits in front of the jailhouse and tells them not to, and the entirety of the encounter gets stopped by Scout. So we'll talk about that a little bit more. So I think that this chapter especially shows the difference between children and adults, because we see the adult representation of this is Atticus and this mob of men, and the children representation is obviously the Finch children and Dill. So Scout and Jem, as we know, since we've already read, and that's why you're watching this video, you're not watching this to get answers, because I'm not giving you answers. But anyway, we can tell that there's a difference between what Scout believes and what these men believe. And so I think that's an interesting idea. So I just wanted to highlight one thing, and it's a little unrelated to this idea of the difference between children and adults, but I think it's an important passage to kind of mull over. It's on page 201. And this is where Scout is narrating about the building of the jail. So we've heard her talk about the people and the families that make up Maycomb. We've heard her talk about the history of Maycomb, and we've obviously inadvertently heard her talk about the social norms of Maycomb. But in this, she's talking about the architecture of Maycomb, and so she's talking about the jail and how it's a staple, an architectural staple in the town. So I'm going to start at its fantasies, which is on 201. Its fantasies was heightened by its red brick facade and the thick steel brick bars at its ecclesiastical windows. It stood on no lonely hill, but was wedged between Tyndall's hardware store and the Maycomb Tribune office. The jail was Maycomb's only conversation piece. Its detractors said it looked like a Victorian privy. Its supporters said it gave the town a good, solid, respectable look, and no stranger would ever suspect that it was full of black people. They did not say black people, so know that. Anyway, so I think that this part is really interesting because they're talking about how this building is beautiful, and even Scout admits that she doesn't think that outside people would ever think that it's full of black people. And so there's still this already inherent and ingrained idea of racism and racial thoughts that Scout already has just from living in Maycomb, and that black people do not live in beautiful homes or beautiful places. And so that's gross, right? That's wrong and gross and icky. And that's a thought that she has. So even in Scout, even in our narrator, there's racial bias. But it also inadvertently admits that the jails are full of black people. As we know, humans can do bad things, but it's not disproportionate like their jail system and even our jail system now reflects. So keep that in mind. This book is still relevant today, is my point. And that's a bad thing. It's a very bad thing. Anyway, moving on to chapter 16. Explain the Okay, so again, the kids are kind of seeing new things. In the last chapter, they saw their dad get threatened for, representing a black person. And in this chapter, Atticus says something to the kids that I think is really important to remember. So on page 210, he says, I'm going to start with Atticus placed his fork, page 210. Atticus placed his fork beside his knife and pushed his plate aside. Mr. Cunningham's basically a good man, he said. He just has his blind spots along with the rest of us. Jem spoke. Don't call it a blind spot. He'd have killed you last night when he first went there. He might have hurt me a little, Atticus conceded. But son, you'll understand folks a little better when you're older. A mob's always made up of people no matter what. Mr. Cunningham was part of the mob last night, but he was still a man. Every mob in every little southern town is always made up of people, Doesn't say much for them, does it? I'll say not, said Jem, but it took an 8-year-old kid to bring them to their senses, didn't it? Said Atticus. That proves something, that a gang of wild animals can be stopped simply because they're still human. Maybe we need a police force of children. You children last night made Walter Cunningham stand in my shoes for a minute. That was enough. So in this, Atticus is admitting that it's a mob mentality that Mr. Cunningham is falling under. You can inherently be a good person but believe in bad things or incorrect things, and mob mentality is a big danger because of that. So keep that in mind, that there may be this mob mentality or this just accepted ideology within the story that these people just accept and don't think over. So keep that in mind. So after they have this dinner with Atticus, it moves into the courtroom, and within the courtroom they see their father in a new light. They see him as the lawyer, as somebody who's representing somebody who believes is not guilty. They see him in a whole new light, and they're presented with these new ideas of like crime, and Scout really doesn't understand what rape is still. I believe at this moment Jem does, because Jem is a little older than Scout, but neither of them understand the brevity of this case. So moving on to chapter 17, in this chapter is when Mr. Tate, who is a sheriff in town, is put on the stand, and he's obviously talked to by both sides of the lawyer, of representation of the lawyer. He's talked to by both sides of the case, their lawyers. So Atticus talks to him, and in this we see that he just believed Bobbywell because he saw a woman being beat up and it was blamed on a black man. He was like, yeah, probably, which shows you inherently how bad this kind of situation is. Scout and Jem see a new side of their father because he's, the prosecutor side of him, the questioning side of him, the lawyer side of him, and so that's a really interesting thing for them to see. Within this conversation, Atticus gets Mr. Tate to say that, or Mr. Tate says that it's on the right side of Mayella's face, the woman who was assaulted, on Mayella's face, and he's like, we got him. It's like that meme when it's like the FBI and they're like, we got him. That's kind of what Atticus was saying, because we later find out something about Tom Robinson that would make it so it would be very difficult for him to beat somebody on the right side of their body, especially face to face. So that is kind of a telling chapter, and Atticus gets a little more confidence in his case. And moving on to 18, this is when Miss Mayella, the woman who was assaulted, gets on the stand and tells her story. And you can tell in this encounter that she's not very educated, as we know that Ewell kids do not go to school, except for the first day of school, because they need to help their father out. She gets offended when Atticus asks if she has any friends, which I think is interesting. And then she gets caught in a lie, because she says, it was the right side of my body I was beat. It was this man. It's that man right there. It's Tom Robinson. And then Tom stands up, and we notice that his left arm is 12 inches shorter than his right, because he got in a cotton gin accident and lost most of his arm. And so everyone's like, you can't beat somebody because you know punching. I don't need to explain that. You don't punch like this, right? It usually goes this way. Usually when you're facing somebody, it's the opposite side, or it's actually like it's the opposite. It's their right side when you're punching with your left, and it's their right side when you're punching with your left. It's their right side when you're punching with your left, and it's their left side when you're punching with your right. And so that kind of shows to everybody in the jury and everybody in the courtroom that it's a very little chance that Tom did this because of his disability. And then the court takes a recess, and that's kind of where the section ends. In this, we see the kids learning new things and the adults not learning anything. But there's this idea of this like difference between kids and their discoveries and who they learn from and what they learn, and how impressionable they are, and kind of how a child's bravery and their new ideas and their moral compass can teach adults a lot of things. And so that's kind of a theme that I got from these 4 chapters. I don't know about you guys. Anyway, so that's kind of my spiel for those 4 chapters. I want to give you guys your essential questions real quick. So this is for chapter 15-18. Of course, it's going to be in the bio. What do we think the outcome of the trial will be? So keep that in mind. Second, why does Miss Mayella lie? Third, do you believe Maycomb can change? So that last one's pretty broad. Again, you don't have to answer those, just read and do your study guide, but those are some things to keep in mind that I would keep in mind. Also, before I give the song of the day and the advice of the day, we had the first extra credit opportunity today, and it went really well. We had quite a few people show up. I was very excited about it, but we will be doing that. We will do at least one more extra credit Zoom meeting in the future. So if you want to be a part of that, fill out that Google form and let me know what day would work best for you, as well as that pre-assessment. I need you to do both of those Google forms so I can have that information moving forward. It went really well. I think it was really successful. I think the people who showed up enjoyed it, and it was a 30-minute meeting. So I would really like to see all of you and really give this opportunity to all of you because I think it was really helpful. So if you are interested, please fill out that Google form. If you have any questions, again, email me, text me, all that good stuff. I'm here for you guys. I miss you guys, and I'm really glad I can still be your teacher. Okay, so the song of the day, I played at the beginning. It is Sound and Color by Alabama Shakes. I thought an Alabama Shakes song would be kind of fun to tag to this To Kill a Mockingbird story that is placed in Maycomb, Alabama. So that's my little spiel for today. And then my advice or challenge for today, make sure you're brushing your teeth. Brush your teeth. Dentists are expensive, and you all deserve to have a beautiful, healthy smile. So brush your teeth. Okay. All right. Bye, guys. Have a good one. See you next video.